The news broke like a thunderclap across the world. It was a move few thought possible. It was an action that defied all expectations. Israel has attacked Hamas leaders, but this was not in Gaza. This was not in the West Bank. The attack happened in Doha, the capital of Qatar. This is a nation that has worked for peace. It has been a key mediator in a long and brutal war. The strike happened far from the usual battlegrounds. It brought the conflict to a place that was supposed to be a safe zone for talks. It was a shocking escalation that changed everything. Yesterday, on Tuesday, September 9, 2025, Israeli jets flew a secret mission. Their target was a residential building in the heart of Doha. Senior Hamas leaders were staying there. They were in Qatar to discuss a ceasefire. They were there to talk about peace. Instead, the sky above them exploded with fire and destruction. The attack sent a clear and brutal message. No Hamas leader is safe. No matter where they are in the world, Israel will find them. This single act has put the entire Middle East on a knife's edge. The world woke up today, September 10, 2025, to this stunning news. This was not just another military operation, it was a direct strike inside a sovereign nation. A nation that is a partner to the United States. A nation that has hosted delicate negotiations for months. The attack feels like a line has been crossed. Many are asking how this could happen. Many are wondering what will come next. The immediate aftermath is one of chaos, anger, and deep uncertainty. The hope for a peaceful resolution seems more distant than ever before. This event is a major turning point. It shatters the established rules of this conflict. For almost 2 years, the war that began on October 7, 2023, has been contained mostly to Gaza and its borders. Now the battlefield has expanded in the most dramatic way possible. The strike in Qatar is not just an attack on Hamas, it is a challenge to the international community. It is a test of alliances. It is a moment that will be remembered for years to come. The question on everyone's mind is simple. What happens now? The answer is far from clear. Israel's military gave the operation a code name. They called it Summit of Fire. The name itself suggests its dramatic and high-stakes nature. It was a joint operation. The Israeli military and the Shin Bet, Israel's internal security agency, worked together. They said their goal was to conduct a precise bombing. They were targeting the people they hold responsible for the attacks of October 7, 2023. This was the event that started this long and painful war. The operation was planned in secret. It was executed with startling speed and force. The attack was powerful and deadly. Israeli media reported that 15 fighter jets were involved in the mission. They fired 10 advanced munitions at a single residential building in Doha. The building was known to house members of Hamas's political office. These were the men who were in Qatar to negotiate. The strike was designed for maximum impact on its specific target. The result was a scene of devastation in a quiet neighborhood. Smoke and dust filled the air where moments before there had been calm. The world was watching as the details slowly emerged from the chaos. The human cost of the attack quickly became clear. 6 people were killed. Among the dead was Abu Yahya. He was the son of Khalil al-Hayya, who is Hamas's chief negotiator. A Qatari security officer, Mohammed al-Humaydi, was also killed in the blast. His death makes this a direct attack on Qatar's own security forces. Hamas confirmed that its negotiating team was the target. They also stated that all the main negotiators survived the attack. The fact that they survived does not lessen the shock. It only adds to the tension of the situation. This was a highly sophisticated military action. To strike a target so deep inside another country's territory requires incredible planning. It requires advanced intelligence and technology. Israel showed its long reach and its willingness to use it. The operation was described as surgical by Israeli officials, but for those on the ground, it was an act of terror. It brought the violence of the war to a city that had been a refuge from it. The attack demonstrated a new and dangerous phase in Israel's strategy against Hamas. It was a clear signal of intent. Qatar is a small but very wealthy nation in the Middle East. It has played a unique and important role in the region for years. It is known for its incredible wealth from natural gas. It is also known for its independent foreign policy. Qatar tries to be a friend to everyone. It hosts the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, the Al Udeid Air Base. Around 10,000 American troops are stationed there. This makes Qatar a critical strategic partner for the United States. The U.S. relies on this base for its operations across the entire region. At the same time, Qatar has maintained an open channel with groups that the US and Israel consider enemies. This includes Hamas. Since 2012, Qatar has allowed Hamas to have a political office in Doha. This was done with the quiet approval of the United States. The idea was that having a physical address for Hamas would make it easier to talk to them. It created a place for diplomacy. It allowed for negotiations that would not be possible otherwise. Qatar became the world's go-to mediator for issues involving Hamas, from prisoner swaps to ceasefire talks. This dual role has always been a delicate balancing act for Qatar. It has tried to be a bridge between the West and groups like Hamas. After the war began in October 2023, Qatar's role became more important than ever. Its diplomats worked day and night. They shuttled between Hamas, Israel, and the United States. They were trying to broker a deal to stop the fighting and free the hostages. Doha became the center of global diplomatic efforts. The hope for peace often ran through the offices and hotel suites of this small Gulf nation. The Israeli attack has shattered this delicate balance. It was an attack on the very idea of Qatar as a neutral ground. By striking Hamas in Doha, Israel showed it no longer respected this safe space for dialogue. The strike puts Qatar in an impossible position. It was attacked by a country that is a partner of its main ally, the United States. And the attack targeted guests that Qatar was hosting for the purpose of peace talks. This event has damaged Qatar's status as a mediator. It has also put its relationship with both Israel and the United States under severe strain. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu quickly took responsibility for the attack. He appeared on television to address his nation and the world. His tone was firm and unapologetic. He confirmed that he had personally authorized the operation. He called it a surgical precision attack. He presented the strike not as an escalation, but as the fulfillment of a long-standing promise. He reminded everyone of the vow Israel made at the very beginning of the war. That vow was to hunt down every person responsible for the horrific massacre of October 7, 2023. In his statement, the Prime Minister was direct. At the beginning of the war, Israel said it would find those responsible for that horror, Netanyahu declared. Today, Israel and I have fulfilled that promise. His words were meant for a domestic audience. He wanted to show strength and resolve to the Israeli people. They have lived through almost 2 years of conflict. The Prime Minister's office also released a statement. It stressed that the operation was totally independent. It was initiated and carried out solely by Israel. This was a clear message to the United States and the world. Israel makes its own decisions. The justification from Israel centers on the idea of justice and security. From Israel's perspective, the Hamas leaders in Qatar were not diplomats. They were terrorists, living in luxury. They were continuing to plan attacks against Israel from a safe distance. Israeli officials believe that as long as these leaders are free, Hamas will continue to be a threat. The attack was framed as a necessary act of self-defense. It was a way to dismantle the leadership structure of an enemy organization. Israel argues that you cannot make peace with a group that is committed to your destruction. This justification, however, is highly controversial. It ignores the context of the peace talks. The Hamas leaders were in Doha specifically to negotiate a ceasefire proposal. This proposal was presented by US President Donald Trump himself. By attacking them during this process, Israel has been accused of sabotaging the path to peace. Critics say the timing was deliberate. They argue that Israel's government was never serious about a deal. They say this attack was designed to make sure the war continues. Israel's claim of justice is seen by others as an act of vengeance that kills any hope for diplomacy. The reaction from Qatar was immediate and honestly just filled with rage. The Qatari government felt completely betrayed. They had put their reputation on the line to host peace talks. They had worked closely with the United States and, other partners. And in return, their capital city was bombed. The Qatari Foreign Ministry issued a statement condemning the attack in the strongest possible terms. They did not hold back their anger at all. They called the Israeli strike a cowardly act. They described it as a flagrant violation of international law and a direct attack on Qatar's sovereignty. A spokesperson for the Foreign Ministry highlighted the danger the attack posed. He said it was a grave threat to the safety of all residents in Qatar, both citizens and foreign nationals. The Prime Minister of Qatar was even more forceful. He declared that his country reserves the right to respond to this aggression. The meaning of this statement is not yet clear, but it signals a major shift in Qatar's position. For years, Qatar has been a calm and diplomatic player. Now it has been pushed into a position of direct confrontation. The feeling in Doha is one of deep insult and anger. The attack has completely undermined Qatar's role as a mediator. How can Qatar host negotiations when one side attacks the other on its soil? The trust that is necessary for diplomacy has been shattered. The Qatari government feels that its good faith efforts have been met with violence. They took a risk by hosting Hamas. They did it with the encouragement of the international community. Now that risk has backfired in the most spectacular way. The attack makes the Qatari leadership look weak and unable to protect its own territory and its guests. This event will have long-lasting consequences for Qatar's foreign policy. The government may be forced to rethink its entire strategy. Will it continue to host the Hamas political office? Will its relationship with the United States change? Will it take a harder line against Israel? These are the questions being debated urgently in Doha. The attack was not just on a building, it was an attack on Qatar's identity as a peacemaker. The nation now finds itself at a crossroads. It must decide how to respond to an act that it sees as a profound betrayal. The Israeli strike in Doha put the United States in an extremely awkward position. You see, the US is a close ally of both Israel and Qatar, and it values its strategic partnership with both nations. This attack forced the White House to walk a very fine line. A White House official confirmed that Israel did notify the US about the attack before it happened. The US then passed this information to Qatari authorities. However, this is where the story gets complicated. The Qatari Prime Minister said the warning came only 10 minutes after the bombs had already fallen. This makes the notification look less like a consultation and more like an afterthought. US President Donald Trump immediately tried to distance himself from the operation. He went on his social media platform, Truth Social, to make his position clear. The decision was made by Prime Minister Netanyahu. It was not mine, he wrote. This statement shows the political sensitivity of the situation. The president did not want to be seen as approving an attack that could destroy his own peace initiative. A White House spokesperson later tried to clarify the US stance, saying the unilateral bombing does not favor the objectives of either Israel or the US. This was a rare public criticism of an Israeli military action. However, the spokesperson also added that eliminating Hamas is a worthwhile goal. This mixed messaging shows the deep conflict within US policy. The US wants to support Israel's security, but it also wants to achieve a stable and peaceful resolution to the conflict. The attack in Qatar works against that second goal. President Trump reportedly had phone calls with both Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Emir of Qatar, trying to calm the situation down. He assured the Qatari leader that such an incident would not be allowed to happen again on Qatari soil. This incident puts a huge strain on the US-Qatar relationship. The Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar is the nerve center for US military operations in the Middle East. The US cannot afford to lose that partnership. The attack makes the American presence in Qatar more complicated. It raises questions among Qataris about the value of hosting US troops if they cannot prevent an attack from a mutual ally. The US is now in a position of damage control. It must try to repair its relationship with Qatar while also managing its alliance with an increasingly unpredictable Israel. The reaction from Hamas was swift and full of fury. The group immediately declared that the attack was proof of Israel's true intentions. In a statement, a Hamas official said the bombing confirms without a doubt that Netanyahu and his government do not want to reach any agreement. From their perspective, this was a deliberate act of sabotage. Their negotiators were in Doha to discuss the very ceasefire plan that the US had proposed. To be attacked during this process was, for them, the ultimate act of bad faith. It shattered any remaining trust they might have had in the diplomatic process. Hamas used the attack to frame Israel as the aggressor who is not interested in peace. They argued that while they were engaging in talks, Israel was planning a violent attack. This narrative is powerful and will resonate with their supporters across the region. The group mourned its dead, including the son of their chief negotiator, but they also projected an image of defiance. They insisted that such attacks would not break their will. They vowed to continue their struggle against Israel. The attack, they claimed, would only strengthen their resolve and prove that resistance is the only path forward. Experts on the region are worried about the internal dynamics within Hamas. The attack could weaken the more moderate figures within the organization. These are the leaders who were willing to engage in diplomacy and negotiations. An expert from the European Council on Foreign Relations told the BBC that this event could empower the extremists. The hardliners within Hamas can now argue that they were right all along. They can say that Israel only understands the language of violence, not diplomacy. This makes it much harder for any future peace talks to succeed. The voices calling for compromise have been silenced by the explosion in Doha. In the immediate aftermath, Hamas has effectively withdrawn from the ceasefire talks. They have stated that there is no basis for discussion when their delegates are being targeted for assassination. The attack has given them a reason to walk away from the table while blaming Israel for the collapse of negotiations. This leaves the entire peace process in ruins. The hope that had been slowly building around the US-led proposal has been extinguished. Hamas's response indicates a return to a hardline stance, suggesting that the conflict is likely to intensify rather than move toward a resolution. The Israeli strike on Qatari soil triggered a wave of condemnation from around the globe. This was not a typical military action, and the world's reaction reflected its unusual nature. The United Nations was among the first to speak out. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called the attack a flagrant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar. He expressed deep concern that the conflict was spreading and becoming more unstable. His words echoed the fears of many international diplomats. They saw the attack as a dangerous escalation that could ignite a wider regional war. Major world powers also voiced their strong disapproval. France and the United Kingdom, both allies of Israel, denounced the attack as a dangerous move. They urged for de-escalation and a return to diplomacy. The Palestinian Authority, which governs parts of the West Bank and is a rival of Hamas, also condemned the strike. They argued that such actions undermine the possibility of a peaceful two-state solution. Even nations that have recently made peace with Israel, like the United Arab Emirates, were forced to criticize the action. The condemnation was widespread and came from all corners of the international community. Regional powers like Saudi Arabia and Iran were particularly harsh in their criticism. Saudi Arabia called the attack a reckless act of aggression that threatens the stability of the entire Gulf region. Iran, a longtime supporter of Hamas, promised that the attack would not go unanswered. The strong language from these influential countries highlights the risk of a broader conflict. The attack has inflamed tensions that were already at a boiling point. It has put pressure on Arab nations to take a stronger stance against Israel, potentially harming the diplomatic progress that has been made in recent years. The overall international reaction is one of shock and alarm. The attack is seen as a reckless gamble by Israel's government. It has isolated Israel from many of its partners and allies. It has destroyed the current framework for peace talks. And it has dramatically increased the risk of the war spilling over into other countries. The world is now watching and waiting to see how Qatar will respond. And everyone is holding their breath, hoping that this single act of violence does not pull the entire Middle East into a new and even more devastating war. The dust has not yet settled in Doha, but the future already looks grim. The immediate consequence of the attack is the death of the peace process. The US-led ceasefire talks, which were the only real hope for an end to the fighting, are now in ruins. Hamas has withdrawn, and it is hard to see how they could be persuaded to return to the table. Qatar, the essential mediator, has been attacked and humiliated. Its ability and willingness to host future talks are now in serious doubt. The bridge for diplomacy has been burned. The path to a peaceful resolution is now completely blocked. The attack has also dramatically increased the risk of a wider regional war. Qatar's government has stated that it reserves the right to respond. What this response will look like is a terrifying unknown. Will it be diplomatic? Will it be economic? Or could it even be military? Any retaliation from Qatar could trigger a chain reaction across the Middle East. Furthermore, the attack could embolden Iran and its allies, like Hezbollah in Lebanon. They may see this as a moment of Israeli weakness and isolation. They might choose this moment to escalate their own conflicts with Israel, opening up new fronts in a war that is already too wide. For Israel, this was a high-risk, high-reward operation. Prime Minister Netanyahu may have scored a short-term political victory at home. He showed strength and fulfilled a promise to his people. But the long-term strategic cost could be enormous. Israel is now more isolated than ever on the world stage. It has angered its most important ally, the United States. It has turned a neutral mediator, Qatar, into a potential adversary, and it may have empowered the most extreme elements within Hamas. This single act may have bought a feeling of victory for a day, but it could lead to a much longer and more dangerous war in the future. We are now in uncharted territory. The old rules of the conflict seem to have been thrown away. The attack in Doha has created a new and unpredictable reality. Will the United States be able to repair the damage and restart the peace process? Will Qatar choose to retaliate? And if so, how? Will Israel's action lead to more security or more violence? These are the questions that will define the coming weeks and months. The world is watching the Middle East with a sense of dread. The hope for peace feels very far away today. What are your thoughts on this shocking development? Do you believe this attack was justified? Share your opinion in the comments below.